we've had the big beautiful bill. Now we have the unfortunate Texas disaster, and I feel like Luxxle is navigating us through it all, right, Molly? I mean, and not just one side, both sides of the story.
Exactly, Alex. It's so great to be back with you here on your podcast. And, whether we're talking about the bill or we're talking about the flooding, it's really no different in the way that Luxxle handles these big news stories. And it's what sets Luxxle apart. And so if you're looking for information on either of these stories or any big news story, what you're going to find on Luxxle is just far more access to information than you'll find anywhere else. And you're going to find it from a variety of perspectives. It's not like if you search for a big news story, you're only going to get these five sources, which we know is, generally the case on the bigger search engines like Google. On Luxxle, you're going to get a variety of political leanings, political perspectives, and also a variety of size and publications. So, your Reason and your Town Hall are going, and your Salem Media publications are going to be right up there in our top stories section with a CNN or a Fox News or a Newsmax or an ABC.
Talk about the how you guys source these stories. I mean, do they email you guys and you just put it up, or how do the search engines work?
No, so we're a search engine. So we're constantly crawling the internet. Our system is set up to constantly crawl the internet for the information. And so one of the things that's really great about Luxxle is we are a fully full featured search engine. And so
Mhm.
it's not like it's just this small operation and we're getting these news stories days later. That's not the case at all. So as soon as these news stories are going up and they're coming into Luxxle and you can access them there, you just can access a much larger variety.
Since we last talked, has there been a more of a movement for Luxel? Are they getting more people to migrate over?
So what we find with Luxel is every time that we go on, whether it's your podcast or we're mentioned in an article, that means that people are learning about Luxel, often for the first time, right? Because what we know is that Google owns 90% of the market share in search. And so most people are still using Google. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're all happy with their experience. They don't know that there are other better options like Luxel out there.
Mhm.
And so what we find is that every single time that we are in a different publication or on a podcast and gain exposure, our user numbers shoot up and they don't go back down. So people come to Luxel when they learn about us and they don't leave. And we're happy about that.
I love the last time when you had shown me the screen of how it works. You have the sort of the conservative view and the liberal view. Is there a preference? Are you finding is Luxel finding people leaning on the conservative side, or the liberal side of the news?
That's a good question, one that I would have to look into a little bit. But one of the things that Luxel really does really well is protect our users' privacy. And so we do not track our users. We do not sell their data. And so we're not super interested in every little thing that someone is searching so that we can monetize that. In fact, we take it a step further and encourage people to use a privacy conscious browser and a VPN because we want people to have an incredible search experience and we don't want to interfere in that in any way.
Now, when it comes to these big stories, are you finding people reach out to you saying, "Hey, thank God you guys were there because now I get the whole picture"? Have you gotten testimonials on that?
Yeah, we do. We get it all the time on social media. People are just so excited once they learn that Luxel exists and once they get to play around with our lenses feature, which for any of your listeners who don't know, we should back up a little bit and just
Mhm.
kind of explain that. So one of the defining features of Luxel, what sets us apart really, is the fact that we have a sorting and a filtering tool called lenses. And so you can decide, you can say, hey, I only want to view results from sources that lean right or results from sources that lean left. You also can have an even mix. And then from there, you can decide how you want to sort them. So it's with our algorithm alphabetically or by freshness. What this does is it gives the user so much more control over their results to eliminate that search engine bias.
Wow, that's a lot, and I love the lenses feature, and I've actually installed it on a couple of my computers, so I've been utilizing Luxel even more since we last talked. You
Yeah.
know, Molly, I have to say, why is I mean, big beautiful bill on it itself, but why is the flooding getting politicized? From your personal opinion, it's ridiculous to me that this become like a political thing, not trying to help human beings here.
Sure. I mean, I think that it is 2025 and everything is going to become a political story. So it's difficult to say exactly how we got here, how we got to this climate, but the guarantee that we can give you from Luxel is that Luxel is not going to interfere at all. And so we're not going to take a stance on any of these stories or anything that you're seeing in the news, which is what you want from your search engine. You don't want your search engine to tell you how to think. You want your search engine give you access to as much information as possible, and then respect your right to independent thought. And that's what we do at Luxxle. So it doesn't matter what the story is, we're not going to get involved.
We're I think a lot of ears perked up when Google started to hide a lot of stories, and I know Lux doesn't do that, but is that what an impetus was for you guys to start up because you saw Google was hiding stories and not giving you the full picture?
Really, it was we had a group of tech entrepreneurs who wanted to bring a fresh perspective to search. And so, when search engines first came out, it was this new innovative thing. There hasn't been that much positive innovation in years, and so our founders wanted to change that, and they definitely have.
I look at Luxl as an emotional component too, because I feel like in a time of craziness, people just breathe and try to find both sides through Luxl. It can help with the trauma or the emotional state of mind that goes into all of these news stories.
Exactly. If you say, I lean in one direction and you only want to read news stories from outlets that also are aligned with those views, you can do that. But it also provides a really great tool and a very easy way to say, hey, these are my thoughts. I'm curious to know what the other side thinks. Or I heard that the other side thinks this, but I don't understand how they could ever think that. This is
Mhm.
a great way to help you navigate through all of that information very easily.
Molly, since we last talked, I know that you've kind of grown in within the role as the comms person there. Are you finding yourself on different shows even more since we last talked?
Sure. So, what's one thing that's been very interesting is just in the last couple of months, there have been so many crazy news stories that have really dominated the headlines, and
Mhm.
so we're trying to bring Luxel back into the forefront of the news cycle because we know that once people learn about Luxel, they love it. They don't switch back. We've already talked about that, but it's getting the word out is really our biggest challenge. Getting people to like Luxel, that I don't have to do anything there. Once people check it out, they're like, I'm not going back to the other one.
Sure.
But it's just making sure that people know about us is definitely our biggest challenge.
And how can my listeners help you get on the map more, if you will? Is it sharing the show? Is it subscribing more? Is it just putting Luxel on the as an extension? What is it exactly?
Yeah, so we do have a browser extension. We also have an app. We would love it if people would, download the browser extension, download the app just to have the best user experience possible. And then also just, share us on social media, share this show, tweet at us, share us on different social platforms. We also have Facebook and LinkedIn. And so just help spread the word to your friends. If you're out at a barbecue, and someone says, oh, let me Google this, correct them and remind them that Google is not a verb, and that there are better ways to search.
Oh, I love that. Google is not a verb. All right. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but the AI component to all this, everybody seems to be relying on AI. And does AI play a role, or is it all natural for you guys?
No, yep. So we are working on developing a couple of different new AI features. We have some out already, and that is in development. And I can't say a ton on it right now, but I can promise you that when I do have more news about our AI to announce, we absolutely can come back. But what you can understand right now about Luxel and AI is that already on our site, within our AI, you have the option to add lenses to AI, and so we're working to eliminate bias in AI already. And some of our new AI developments we'll be able to announce later on this summer.
How do you guys do this without requiring a subscription to Luxel to be part of the club, if you will? How do you make sure everybody's involved without even charging?
So Luxel makes money off of clicked ads, and right now we are partially privately funded and working on a round of fundraising.
And when investors come, I'm sure it's a moment of celebration, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and like everyone when they see Luxel for the first time, they're excited because when was
Mhm.
the last time that you felt like, hey, this is truly innovative in the search engine industry?
Tell me about that part. Like, why are people investing? And I feel like there's the same reason people are consuming because Luxel has that mission that both buyers and consumers are looking into right now.
Sure. So people are ready for change. And so when we're talking about our users, they're so excited when they learn that there's a better option out there because I think a lot of people are unhappy with the search engines that they know about to use, whether that is for issues of bias, issues of privacy, or just the general results that they're getting. And so when people learn that there actually is a full featured search engine that can do what the other search engines are doing, but so much better and so much more with so many more customization options and
Sure.
control, they just get really excited about it.
All right, let me ask you this because I do feel like everybody can have a news feature, right? But how do you guys stay current? How do you make sure the news that people are getting are almost to the minute, if you will?
Sure. So our systems are just really good. So they're constantly out there crawling the internet for all of the latest and update date information. We have our own search index. And so
And there's a ranking system, right? If I'm not mistaken, last time I saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that still a thing on Luxxle, or what is?
So it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but what it is when there's a big news story that would prompt lenses, right? So if you search tacos near me, you're not going to get the split of right-leaning and left-leaning sources
Sure.
because you're just looking for tacos, right? But if you're searching for a big news story, you'll see in the top story section there is an even split of typically three sources from left-leaning publications, three sources from right-leaning publications in our top story section, and then from there they alternate a right-leaning source, a left-leaning source, a right-leaning source, and a left-leaning source, showing that we're not giving preference to any side here.
And that's also behind the scenes because I know you mentioned that the people that started this aren't exactly conservative either. Tired of the mainstream. They're just people that want to make a difference. And yes, they happen to be Democrat also.
So here's the thing, and I love this about Luxxle. I don't know what the political leanings are of the folks who have started Luxxle. And that is how we should keep things when it comes to your
Mhm.
search engine. You shouldn't be able to sense a political leaning from your search engine. To make this clear, Luxxle is not a conservative search engine. We are not a liberal search engine. We are strictly neutral, and that's exactly how you should want it. You shouldn't want any sort of interference in that way.
When we first talked, I feel like it was still like not an upcoming thing, but it was still really in its infancy. Have you seen in those few months it turned from infancy to toddler, if you will, like real growth here?
We're definitely seeing consistent growth, which we're happy about. But the biggest way for us to grow is just to get the word out. So we so appreciate you having me on to
Now,
talk
can
about that. I could
people?
talk about Luxel all
Well,
day,
I
and
was gonna say, can people email people at Luxxle saying, "Hey, I got this story. Can you put it up there?" How does that work, or does that work at the moment?
so our systems are actually out crawling the web. So they're coming in automatically through our search
And
index.
and I guess if you Luxxle someone, their name will pop up and show every story, or how does that work? If you look for a certain columnist and all that.
That is one thing that, especially smaller publications, we've heard from different writers and different journalists that they can't find their stories on Google. Well, they don't run into that issue on Luxel. If you look
Oh.
for a story that you wrote, you generally know the headline or the topic, and then you search your name. It's much easier to find it on Luxel than it would be on
And I
Google.
appreciate the shout out to Salem Media because I feel like they're ones that do get buried on the mainstream world. So thank God they can find our columnists there.
Yeah, it's really easy to find Salem Media content on Luxel.
And that is awesome. Well, since we last talked, anything you wanted to add since we last chatted? I feel like we left it off at a point where we gotta just keep building this, right?
Yeah, yeah. We do have some exciting announcements coming, hopefully at the end of the summer. And so we'll keep you posted on those. But, I think one thing that I'd just like to also talk about is, Luxel is not just a search engine for news content. News content, the way that we handle news content is really what sets us apart. But we also do a great job with, like if you're looking for a new restaurant or you're looking for just general web content or information about a historical event, it's really easy to find and access information on Luxel. We also make it really easy to navigate different video options. So let's say you're searching for videos of a game that you really like to play. On our video tab, we will break it out into different video platforms. So maybe you could find those videos on Rumble, or you could find those videos on YouTube, and there are a couple of different options as well. And so it's just a lot easier to sort it and navigate that content.
Are you shocked by the censorship that does go on by these different websites that claim to be for the people? It is shocking. I mean, YouTube also censors as well.
Sure. I mean, it's tough to say, what shocks me. I was a journalist for 10
That's
years, and
right.
so not a
Yes.
whole lot really shocks me, but it is just so refreshing to see a search engine like Luxel taking this approach of um, remaining unbiased and giving our users greater access to information so that they can make their own decisions. It's just incredibly refreshing because there's not another search engine out there doing anything like this.
And I remember now where we want to pick up about your journalism career because we barely covered that last time. So,
Yeah.
how did you go from journalism? And I know you talked about how you wished you had Luxxle when you were a journalist, but how did you go from that world to where you are now?
Yeah, so I was in news for almost a decade. I started off, I was a writer at a station in Boston, and then I moved to the ABC affiliate, WAOW in central Wisconsin, was there for 4 years as a reporter and then an anchor. And then I moved to WHIO, the CBS affiliate in Dayton, Ohio. Started off as a reporter and then moved to like a 50-50 split reporting and anchoring. And I loved news. I loved being a journalist so much. I loved sharing information. I loved storytelling. I loved investigative work. And I loved writing. And so what I didn't love though is working nights and sometimes weekends and most holidays. So I was so lucky when I decided to leave news that I found a company to work for that has a lot of the same journalistic values that I held true to. So, remaining unbiased, presenting all sides of a story and letting people make their own decisions and have their own thoughts without search engine influence.
There's the journalism today, and I don't want to knock every journalist. I do believe in journalists, but the idea of journalism does seem to be swaying a certain way. Does it ever make you want to roll your sleeves back up and say, I'm going to go back into this field and correct what I'm seeing as wrong here?
Not correct what I'm seeing is wrong or anything like that. Sometimes I do, miss being on a beat, cracking open a big story. I miss some of that excitement and things like that. But I also get to be part of a company that has really consistent, exciting new developments to discuss. And so while I'm not telling stories about city commissions and fires, and sometimes a big high school sports victory. I am telling really exciting stories about all the exciting developments at Luxxle. And so it's, been a great transition for me.
Have we lost the art of local news? I feel like, though, it's not as revered as it used to be.
I don't think that we've lost the art of local news. I think that people aren't paying attention to local news as much as they should. I have a lot of friends who are still in the industry, incredibly, incredibly talented journalists who really care about their local communities and what it is that they're doing. And what's going on locally in your community has such a huge impact on your day-to-day life, and I think people often forget that and forget that local news exists when they really should be paying much much closer attention to it.
To the journalists that are up and coming today, what's your message to them? Do you ever talk to journalists that want to, or aspiring journalists, I should say?
Sure, you're not going to get rich, but you are going to have a very very fulfilling career. um, Also, you're gonna miss a good amount of holidays, but then when you have a random day off on a Tuesday, flights are a lot cheaper, which is great.
If I may ask, when you were on the way out of journalism, was the newsroom becoming more balanced, or was it more male dominated? Like, how was the newsroom ratio when you left?
From a male to female perspective,
Yes.
that's a good question. I would say, hmm, I think I throughout my career, I worked in fairly balanced newsrooms. My newsroom in Wisconsin at one point may have, I think, probably skewed more female. But the last newsroom that I worked in, I would say was probably about a 50-50 split. And news is still fairly traditional in the sense that often anchor pairings are male female. And so I always had a male co-anchor throughout my career.
As you know, New York City just had its big Good Night and Good Luck run with Edward R. Murrow, George Clooney, and Edward R. Murrow. Did you watch the special on that at all, or have you followed that whole show? Because it was a movie,
Yeah.
originally.
No, I didn't. It's been, something I probably should be watching, but I haven't seen that one yet.
Because he's just who was the journalist you looked up to when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, I was a big Savannah Guthrie fan. And honestly, I still am. Her ability to storytell, and to grill someone in an incredibly impactful and poignant interview 1 minute, and then be talking about a children's book that she wrote herself
Mhm.
the next minute is just incredible. Yeah, she's someone I definitely look up
And
to.
she
And then
also traveled a lot at the Today Show. I mean, she's always traveling to different places. It's really awesome
she's
to watch her.
Yeah, she bounces around everywhere. And, other journalists that I look up to are names, in that your New York audience might not know so well. But, some of the anchors that I worked with, especially at my most recent station, James Brown, Cheryl McHenry, um, Jim Oddie, just incredibly talented journalists who are able to investigate and dig for facts, and really shaped me into the journalist that I ended up becoming.
You mentioned X, and I do feel like there is a rush for journalists to have that one leg up to break the story, but they don't always break it accurately. Are you finding that too? Like there's this rush to be number one, and now social media just lets you post anything, so it could be inaccurate, and it makes you look bad at times.
So good journalists uh, will will be second to the story if it means that they get the information right. There were times when I wasn't first on the air with something, and I'm okay with that because I was doing it to guarantee accuracy. And so, just like in any industry, right, there are some journalists who are better than others. And so, watch and read journalists and get a sense of their accuracy and their credibility. They've got to earn your trust. So read their content, watch their content, and let them earn your trust. But there are obviously some who are better than others.
Were you in the local? Did you do local news writing as well, or was it mainly TV and radio and all that? Or what?
Both, and a little bit of radio.
Cool.
Yeah, just a little bit. Radio I always enjoyed because I was never in charge when I was doing radio. I would go on a couple of evening shows, more feature style shows, and they were always a good time. But I didn't have to pay super close attention because we were talking about fun things. On the news side of things, the TV side, one thing that people I don't think realize is that most anchors are incredibly involved in the process, and reporters definitely are of creating story or of writing stories. And so when I was out in the field, I was fully writing all of my own stories. So it's not like you just go out in front of a camera and speak on TV and that's your whole job. I was doing the interviews, I was researching the documents, I was putting in records requests, and then I was writing those stories. And then while I was on the desk, I would read every script before I would go on TV because I didn't want something coming out of my mouth if I didn't
Sure.
understand it, or if I didn't think that it was accurate. And so there's a lot of editorial conversations that go on in a newsroom beyond just the big fancy presentation on TV.
I will also say this. I often find that local networks need the funding. I don't know if you've had budget issues over the years
Yeah.
when you were there, but it is important to fund local journalism, isn't it?
It definitely is. This is, something that's impacting newsrooms all across the country. It's why you're seeing some local newsrooms shut down. It's why you're seeing them dramatically reduce headcount. It's why you're seeing, maybe the maybe your local news is now coming out of the state capital instead of coming out of your hometown.
Mm.
And it's all because of budget cuts and the different mergers and acquisitions that have happened in the journalism world, and especially in the TV space, but also on the print side in the last 15 to 20
I know
years.
the Daily News, you look at the papers, they're very different. The Daily News is a little thinner than the Post. And
Yeah.
that's a little sad to me because it means how much that newsroom got impacted.
Right, right. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever worked in a newsroom that hasn't been through a round of cuts. And it's tough because you have these journalists, they're young, they're not making a ton of money, and it's sort of a do more with less. So they still have the same amount, if not more, time to fill on TV. But they're being told, okay, well, now you don't have a photographer to work with, so you have to shoot your own
Sure.
story and edit it. Or, you used to do one story a day, now you're doing three stories a day. And so it can be tough. So hold journalists accountable for their credibility. If their hair looks a little off one day, cut them some slack.
Molly, I was about 10th grade or so, or even younger, because I was born and bred into journalism. My mom's a journalist for 30 plus years, 40 plus years, really. And so I've kind of been in that vein forever. But when did you know you want to really get into these mediums? I knew it in 10th grade. I don't know about you if it was that early on or whatnot, but it was in high school for me.
Okay, so not to story top you, but I'm going to go back a little bit earlier. I was 13, and I
Cool.
started watching Oprah after school just because, Oprah was on. Um, and her ability to connect with people and share stories, just the way that she could interview people.
Mhm.
Oftentimes these were, more adult topics that were going right over my head, but her ability to interview people and capture a story was something that I just fell in love with. And so I knew that I wanted to do that. So I studied broadcast journalism while I was at school at Boston University. And around my freshman year is when I started watching the Today Show and fell in love with the harder news angles and just took it from there.
Were you always in awe on how these reporters and anchors would always just leave the desk and cover the news in the field? I always find that the most interesting thing is when you could bring your thoughts to the field and make it happen out there too.
Yeah, and I think what people don't realize is that often the majority of the time when you see an anchor in the field, they don't have a teleprompter. The really, really high up anchors, if they're just kind of standing there staring at a camera and talking for 30 minutes straight and it feels very scripted, good chance they have a teleprompter. Your reporters who are out in the field, they're not working with a teleprompter. And so it's an incredible skill to have to be able to be live on TV and speak in a conversational but informational and accurate way.
I'm gonna bring it to Luxxle in 1 minute just to top all this off. But craziest story or most intriguing adrenaline, because covering a story in the field is adrenaline rush. Okay,
Yeah.
what was the adrenaline rush moment for you? What story gave you the most rush?
That's a great question. What story gave me the most rush? Any election night is exciting. Watching results roll in, no matter what the results are, is exciting. Knowing that that is going to change the candidate's life, and knowing that it's going to have a very direct impact on local communities, is was always really, really exciting.
All right, I'm gonna say this: when you see youngsters and young females come up to you and say, "Hey, I saw you on TV," is that, as they say in the meme today, is that the point that you're inspiring others, or what brought you the most joy when you were in journalism?
When I was in news, it wasn't about being on TV, being recognized, or anything like that. And while I did enjoy mentorship that I was able to do for some younger producers and some younger reporters, the thing that brought me the most joy was how I could um, expose information that would impact people in local communities. And so, and the way that I could storytell in a way that was impactful for people in local communities was really what did it for me. Sometimes people go through something very difficult, and being able to share their story after the loss of a loved one, being able to
Mhm.
share how a new city law is going to impact them, and put a human face behind some of these procedures and legislation is was really rewarding for me.
One of the taglines I used to have before the one leg up moniker was, making stories trend that should be trending, meaning we gotta get more things highlighted. And I feel like you and I have that same connection there, that same passion to get those stories highlighted, like Luxxle getting Luxxle highlighted.
Right. It's like, why isn't, it's sort of the why is no one talking about this? Well, here we
Right.
are, we're talking about it. Let's get more people talking about it.
Amen. Well, Molly, to that point, I feel like now I understand why Luxor brought you in. That you have the journalism mindset, the instincts to make this run. You have the news side of it, if you will.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I love the news side of it. Also, just being a former newsie, having a search engine that handles news content in such a responsible and fair way is really valuable. So, really fortunate to work for such a great company, and hope you guys all check it out.
And I'm going to check in with you on this again. But I asked you last time, do you still Google things, or are you full on Luxor? Like, do you slip at times, or what?
No, I'm full on Luxxle, but it's always good to keep an eye on the competition. And so, like before this call, I looked at a few things on Google to see how our results compare. And it was just, there was no comparison. Luxxle had just a way, way bigger variety of political perspectives, sources of all sizes. Google had, well, what you would expect from Google.
Which is a little disappointing because they're supposed to be the leading, yet they're not all there, if you will. So
I would say that they are leading in user numbers, but not leading in quality.
now that's a catchphrase right there. Well, Molly, you have the great, line sound bites, and I will share a lot of this with my audience and in clips and all that. And then, of course, the full interview you can find at both my podcast and my blog. Thanks so much for joining me, Molly of Luxel.
Thanks so much for having us. Can't wait to check back in a couple months.
Amen. Thank you so much.